So we were talking about our best vacation, and we had some Mexico people down there. No, joking, Robin, where's she at? The yelling again. So we're agile governance for the dynamic business environment. So a lot of our discussion was around the governance of implementing the agile environment. Culture buy-in, top-down, bottom-up leadership. But basically it came down to empowering your people to make those decisions, giving them the guardrails in which they need to play, and then allowing them to do those changes and do those iterations that they have been empowered to make those changes. But a lot of it had to do with the culture shift. So if people are used to having their leadership tell them when, how, why, you're not going to get that dynamic, iterative response that you need to get from your team. So third bullet was make sure that you have the data to back up what you're trying to get to your North Star. So that means to ensure that you have a good data to reference. And that allowed those. Our case studies, we have a couple of those. One was a theme of, trying to boil the ocean. You're taking on so much and then you just lose sight of it. So you go down that rabbit hole and you just continue down that, and you have no time to make those changes. Second one was your sprints. Make sure that they're 1 week or 2 week, so you can have that flexibility to make those changes. Because once you're at the 4 week, the 5 week, again, you're not able to be that flexible and that agile to make those changes as needed. So hopefully those are my answers.
All right, our table discussed on the topic sustainable governance practices in enterprises. But one thing I want to say, we had, our table was on fire. Yes. We had diverse perspectives. I'm glad it concluded in an hour. Otherwise, it would have gone for days and days. The first topic we discussed was ESG governance integration, and there we had diverse perspectives. And basically what we came up with is it's not just about a checkbox for ESG, but it's compliance, and it's basically embedding within the DNA of the organization. And to do that, top-down approach is the only way, because individuals have different perspectives and different priorities, but the organization has to push that governance down across the organization to make it happen. That's one point. And the next point we discussed was around tracking the ESG within the organization, what kind of metrics and the reporting is used across the organizations. Again, we have different perspectives there as well. To conclude what we talked about, it's again nothing but transparency, right? Many organizations struggle with the standardized sustainable reporting metrics and frameworks. AI and automation can help, but it can only do so much if it comes down to, leadership and prioritization. If that initiative is not prioritized for whatever reason, because if it's not moving the business value, it's not meeting the top line or bottom line, obviously it is going to be deprioritized. And the third point we discussed was the role of AI and technology. AI can be a game changer in governance. However, it has to be used right, and you have to collect the right data. And how much data do you collect? How much data do you retain? As you retain more data, how are you impacting ESG? Those are some of the hot topics we discussed, and it was fun, and I would like to share and learn more from my table and others as well. One final thought I want to share based on our discussion is sustainable governance isn't just about compliance. It's about business resilience, risk mitigation, and a long-term value creation. And I'm pretty sure it's going to take a while for all organizations to realize the value of ESG, but I think somewhere we have to start small to operationalize that in a bigger scale.
Hi, I'm Miguel from Zone. Thanks again for letting me be here. We talked about the role of data governance in complex enterprise systems. And similarly, we had an extremely lively table with a lot of different viewpoints, perspectives, and experiences. We got straight out of the gate, what I think is the heart of the challenge, which is how do you win the hearts and minds of people to perform the function of data governance, not only with a separate dedicated team, but people who are doing their job every day, understanding the importance. So to me, that was our first point, and I think it's probably the most important takeaway about how do you really get there. So we talked about a couple of different ways to get there. One is really have strong business acumen. People need to know why. They need to know the impact. They need to know what the metrics are. How does the organization make money? And how does protecting or managing that data help that mission? The other thing we talked about was, especially with enterprise systems, the very important point of knowing what your system of record is. We talked about several of us who we recognize that oftentimes that is not identified in the course of a major enterprise transformation or enterprise system implementation. And then you wonder why things don't work and data doesn't flow from upstream and downstream. So we saw that as a fairly common thread. And then as we talk about getting those people's hearts and minds and really understanding the business, is keeping our executive leaders involved. Don't let them delegate or say it's not my problem, because they're the ones who should be making the decisions based on running the company. So how do you get not only the people on the ground involved, how do you keep the executives involved, and how do you help them understand what their actual role is as a senior leader in ensuring that we get there? One of the things we talked about quite a bit was the org structure. So with our financial services folks at the table, they have a very evolved and a very regimented org structure for data governance, as well as a great process to leverage them. So they're part of the project designs, identifying how data should be used, making sure people are really thinking about it before you even get there. Challenge is, if you're not highly regulated, it's really hard to get that funded. That's right. Right? So the challenge is, how do we build that business case for getting the right level of funding to be able to have that support without, having the pressure of a regulator who forces it down. And that's something we didn't have quite the answer for, but we're going to work on it right now. We'll figure it out. Because I think it is tied to the business acumen. Metrics matter, business decisions matter. So that's what we had to talk about. So thanks, and again, this is Miguel from Zone.
So my team had the challenge of discussing multi-cloud governance, and it was so exciting and riveting. I'm only left with 2 participants. But what we talked about was, were we an accidental or deliberate multi-cloud operator? And so with that, we'll take a little bit of poll around the room. How many people run on more than 1 hypervisor? More than 2? More than 3? More than 4? Ooh, that's me. All right, so with that, what we talked about is, how hard is it to come up with a governance model and placement strategy that really allows you to achieve scale and avoid vendor lock-in? Then we kind of unpacked that a bit and said, can you even get to a common control plane, which is the dream? And can you do it with competing vendor ecosystems? And so it was really good discussion. I'm sorry that my people were sleeping, but it was good. And thanks, everyone. Off to
I'm going to be concise, but I'm the last one here. My team was Jarrett, Chevelle, Larry, Dave, Chandran, Jason, George, and Abhijit. So most of them are still here. Our topic was emerging technology and the governance evolution, and part of it was discussing quantum computing and how that's going to affect governance. The first well, we had a bunch of good points here, but the first of the three is, and Jason brought this up, is governance is going to need to be real time in the future. We have a lot of systems that are old, and companies, you know how long it takes companies to upgrade systems. It's still companies on the S400. So the idea of being hacked is probably really great in the future, and so some sort of real-time governance system is what we think is going to be needed there. The second point brought up by Chevelle is she works in a regulated industry, and so she has a base level of governance. There's governance for the different industries her company supports. Some of the customers have very specific governance requirements, and there are regional requirements. So how does that all play in when you have new technologies coming? There's all these different layers, and those layers don't move that fast. And the third point was kind of by everyone at the table, and is talking about a mindset shift, and how you think differently in the future. I mean, because, one thing George brought up was financial records used to be on paper, then they went to computers, right? There's all these different changes, and understanding how those changes that we don't know about are going to affect us, and getting the not just the governance team and those in information technology, but the whole business to understand that shift. So it was a great team, and I want to have another conversation with them at the next